The day you started abandoning yourself. There was a moment, probably not one you can point to exactly, when you began doing something that would quietly shape the rest of your life. You started choosing other people's comfort over your own truth, not in a dramatic way, in a small way. You said yes when you meant no. You laughed when something was not funny. You stayed quiet when something felt wrong. And none of it felt like a choice, exactly. It felt like what you were supposed to do. Psychologists call this self-abandonment, and it does not happen all at once. It accumulates. Each small act of suppression teaches your nervous system one thing: your needs are less important than what this situation requires of you. The mechanism is approval seeking, and it is one of the most underexamined forces in adult psychology. Research by Brené Brown and her team at the University of Houston identified approval seeking as a primary driver of what she calls the armor we build around our authentic selves. The armor keeps you safe from rejection, but it also keeps you unknown, even to yourself. Carl Rogers, one of the founders of humanistic psychology, described the same pattern with different language. He called it the gap between the real self and the ideal self. The real self is who you actually are, your actual needs, reactions, values, and desires. The ideal self is the version of you that you believe others will accept. When the gap between these two selves becomes large enough, Rogers observed, psychological distress follows automatically. Not because something is wrong with you, because something is wrong with the distance. The question worth asking is, when did the gap start forming? For most people, it starts in childhood. The family therapist and researcher Bowen described how children in emotionally demanding families learn to fuse their identity with the emotional state of the people around them. A parent who is upset becomes your problem to solve. A room where tension is rising becomes your responsibility to diffuse. You become a regulator of other people's emotions before you have fully formed your own. Bowen called this emotional fusion, and its long-term cost is what he termed low differentiation of self, a reduced capacity to know where someone else's feelings end and yours begin. Adults with low differentiation of self do not usually know they have it. They experience it as being highly sensitive, or extremely empathetic, or just someone who cares deeply about others. Which is true. But sensitivity that costs you yourself is not a virtue. It is an adaptation that has outlived the conditions that made it necessary. The psychologist Nathaniel Branden, who spent decades studying self-esteem and self-betrayal, described what he called the disowned self, the parts of your personality, desires, and reactions that you learned were unacceptable and began to hide. The disowned self does not disappear. It does not go quiet. It comes out sideways, as anxiety, as resentment, as a vague sense that you are performing your life rather than living it. That performing feeling is diagnostic. If you frequently feel like you are playing a character rather than being a person, you are already familiar with this. The character is likable and manageable and easy for others to be around. The person underneath may be angrier, needier, sadder, or more particular than the character suggests. And, crucially, the person underneath is the one doing all the feeling. The character does not feel anything real. It just manages. Erik Erikson, in his theory of psychosocial development, described the central task of adolescence as identity formation, the process of answering the question, who am I, separate from what others need me to be? When that question is not answered, or when the conditions of a young person's life punish authentic answers, the result is what Erikson called identity diffusion. Identity diffusion in adulthood looks less like confusion and more like shapeshifting. You are slightly different with every person you are around, not in the natural, healthy way that all social beings adjust tone and context. In the way where you genuinely do not know which version is you. The accumulation of this shapeshifting is what self-abandonment actually feels like from the inside, not a single dramatic betrayal. 1,000 small ones, each justified by circumstance. I did not say anything because I did not want to cause a scene. I agreed because disagreeing felt too risky. I did not ask for what I needed because I was not sure I deserved it. Each of these decisions felt reasonable at the time. That is the nature of the pattern. It feels reasonable because it has always worked in the short term. Suppressing your reaction gets you through the dinner without a fight. Agreeing reduces the friction in the moment. Staying small keeps you likable. But the long-term cost compounds. Research by James Pennebaker at the University of Texas, Austin, has consistently shown that emotional suppression, the act of experiencing an emotion but preventing its expression or acknowledgement, is not neutral. It is physiologically expensive. People who chronically suppress emotions show elevated cortisol, diminished immune function, and higher rates of depression and anxiety than those who process and express emotions. The body keeps the score, as Bessel van der Kolk titled his foundational work on trauma and the body. Unexpressed experience does not evaporate. It is stored. And the version of you that stores it carries the weight of everything that was never said. So what does the reversal look like? The psychologist Kristen Neff, whose research on self-compassion at the University of Texas at Austin has produced some of the most replicated findings in modern psychology, makes a distinction that matters here. She differentiates between self-esteem, which is contingent on performance and comparison, and self-compassion, which is the unconditional stance of treating yourself as a legitimate person whose needs are worth acknowledging. The key word is acknowledging. Reclaiming yourself does not start with changing your behavior. It starts with noticing it. What did you suppress today? What did you agree to that you did not mean? What did you feel that you quickly explained away? These are not rhetorical questions. They are the beginning of a different kind of self-knowledge. One that does not require you to be different, only more honest about who you already are. The philosopher Simone Weil wrote that attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. Most people direct that attention outward continuously. What changes things is when you begin to direct some of it back. Not in self-obsession. In self-recognition. The day you started abandoning yourself was probably not a day you remember. But the day you stop is one you can choose.